Every Monday, I'm joined by best-selling author and associate editor of The Spectator, Douglas Murray. Douglas, let's start with the supposed king and queen of empathy, Jacinda Ardern and Justin Trudeau, who are finally being exposed for the vacuous imposters that they are. All the media adulation in the world can't hide their shortcomings during this pandemic. You wrote superbly about how these two are more concerned about performative caring than actually displaying any real capability, adaptability and expertise.
That's right. I mean, it's obvious. It was obvious from the start when both of them ran for office. Both Ardern and Trudeau were presenting themselves as if there was something very special they had, which gave them a great advantage over their alternatives, and that was that they were especially empathetic, especially caring. Jacinda Ardern's face crumples up with empathy and sympathy. She seems to express such care about people and about things. And of course, Justin Trudeau, who has even nicer hair than Jacinda Ardern, always did the same thing. Always said how much he cared. And there are several things that this I always thought showed. I mean, the first is, by the way, that empathy is not a particularly important trait in politics. It's important, but there are many things more important, such as, for instance, competency. Now, this whole modern idea that we've sort of slipped into, that as long as somebody's face crumples enough and they show enough sympathy for people, that somehow they're going to be good or better leaders, has been shown up by both Ardern and Trudeau as an absolute crock as an idea. In both of their cases, they have done things that are, apart from anything else, completely lacking in understanding or ability to answer the challenges that their nations have gone through. But secondly, even on their own terms, they haven't shown the very thing that they've both boasted they have in such large quantities. Neither Ardern doesn't seem to have very much empathy, actually, for the people of the benighted country that she rules over. You know, as every other country in the world is coming out of lockdowns, New Zealand last week announced new restrictions. So she doesn't seem to have all that much empathy for the people of New Zealand. I rather wonder whether those of us who went to that country will be asked by our grandchildren what it was like, you know, in this country that decided to lock itself off from the world in the 2020s. And as for Canada, I mean, Trudeau, as he has shown with the truckers and the people who have decided to protest against his appalling government in Ottawa, have shown he has no sympathy or empathy for these people. He says they're racists, misogynists, homophobes, transphobes, every other one of the modern phobes. He and his appalling supportive paper, the Toronto Star, pump out the most vicious propaganda against these truckers. Justin Trudeau has no empathy for them. He has no empathy for the media who are asking questions that he doesn't like. He told one female reporter this week that he wouldn't even deign to answer her question because she came from Rebel News, which he says is not an organ he will answer questions from. So they don't even on their own terms have the abilities they claim to have.
Well, we mentioned Trudeau and his treatment of the truckers. I mean, that has been astonishing to see the bald-faced lies you mentioned, the gaslighting, and now he's threatening severe consequences to those taking part. So he's gone from slandering them to threatening them. How is this going to play out? Because these truckers are having a real impact, not just in Canada, but their story is travelling around the world.
It is absolutely scandalous. Trudeau should go. His government should fall. There should be fresh elections in Canada and the Canadian people should elect somebody else. I'll tell you why. It's not just that list of things you just listed off. It's a whole set of other things that are now absolutely criminal that the Canadian government is doing. Case one, encouraging GoFundMe, the platform. By the way, nobody should ever use GoFundMe ever again for any cause, however good. Use other platforms. The Canadian government put pressure on GoFundMe where there had been millions of dollars that had gone to the Canadian truckers to support them in their protest. GoFundMe was encouraged by the Canadian government to freeze those assets and then to distribute them to other groups, like BLM, for instance. Now, this was an absolutely disgraceful intervention by the Canadian government. It has been now questioned by GoFundMe, but nevertheless, nobody should ever use GoFundMe. It has also, the Canadian government has put pressure on some of the Canadian banks to freeze the accounts of truckers. I mean, this is just unbelievable banana republic behavior. Democratic governments do not have the right to order banks to freeze the accounts of people who do not agree with the diktats of the elected government. The Trudeau government has massively overreached. I think it is criminal. He has to go.